can't remember if I answered this one last time, and I talk about sleep constantly, and it's funny that I even take these questions because I so feel like I'm not an expert at all. I do have 8 children, and all 8 do sleep through the night, and so I guess I have what works for me, even if it's probably not, it wouldn't pass any of the books or the courses that you take on sleep. I don't think I do anything right. My name is Lisa, mother of 8 and creator of the blog and YouTube channel Farmhouse on Boone. On this podcast, I like to talk about simplifying your life so you can live out your priorities. I help you learn how to cook from scratch and decorate on a budget through this podcast and my courses, Simple Sourdough and the Simple Sewing series. I also help people reach their goals from home through my business course, YouTube Success Academy. I will leave links to these resources in the show notes and description box below. Now let's get into the show. Welcome back to the Simple Farmhouse Life podcast. Today, I am going to be answering some of your questions about the build, about pregnancy, and anything else in between. There's a lot going on in our lives right now, and this podcast has been a really great place to take you along in a less formal way. So my YouTube channel, my main channel, Farmhouse on Boone, I do these curated style videos where I will share 5 recipes for the week that use pantry staples or things I make in the summer when I don't want to cook or my clean house routine. And then I have this podcast where I ramble on and talk about all the things that maybe I wasn't able to address over there in this format. Although I do answer some questions over there, try to keep with the build updates more visually, but here is a good place for some of these more rambly things. I am actually going to be filming today, so it'll probably come out around the same time as this recording, a build update. So I'm going to go out to the farm. I'm going to either have Luke stay somewhere with the boys because when we started this build process, or before we started it, we really thought that we would be out there every day, all day, really observing everything, like watching how it all goes together. Because I think this is a really good educational experience for a lot of our kids. But with such a wide age range of children, there's, I think, way more dangerous things on a build site than I ever imagined, which this is coming from somebody who hasn't built at all. So it's very obvious to any of you who have built that a build site with toddlers, with babies, isn't exactly ideal. So it's actually tricky to be there very much. We end up going there a couple of times a day. We check in, we talk to the builder. If we have the youngest ones with us, we will just either leave them strapped in or put them in a stroller, take their, the baby, put his car seat, set it outside, or set him in the stroller, strap him in, push him around, or we'll just kind of divide and conquer because it's just so hard. There's still a spot where, so instead of doing like a walkout basement where we have retaining walls and you can actually come straight out into the yard, we did a little staircase down on the exterior where it'll have concrete steps. But right now, the steps aren't in, and then there will be a really nice fence around all of it and a little gate that you can go down into the basement. But right now, there's no steps and there's no gate or fence of any kind. So basically, you can just straight walk up to it. The ground level is basically at it. And then you could just fall down about 10 feet into concrete. And that's not even the worst of it. There's 3 stories in our house because we're finishing out the attic. And so when you go up all the stairs and there's no railings and there's no walls in between where there's going to be walls, you can literally stand at the top and see all the way down to the basement, which won't be like that. But I mean, I don't even know how many feet that is. It's a lot of feet because you have gone through the first floor, the second floor, which the first floor is 9'6" ceilings. The second floor is 9' ceilings. And then you've even gone up to a 3rd level. And then there's all the way down to the basement, which is a 9-foot pour basement. So it's just like so nerve-wracking. And then I have a lot of kids who like to climb a lot and like some older kids. And so like the barn, it's still just framing. We're working on getting that all done. So right now, like it's like a jungle gym. You can basically just climb up. And of course, we can tell them no and all of that. But it's just stressful for me to be like, no, don't do that. Don't do that. So we don't get out there to do these kind of updates very much, but I am going to actually, like, just myself go out there and share about the design process, kind of some of the hiccups along the way, bumps in the road that we've had. There's plenty of all of it, the progress we've made, and the timeline, I guess, of how it's all shaping up. So excited to do that. All right, I'll dive into a few of the questions. And don't worry, this podcast won't be all new build, because I know a lot of you are not building, probably not interested in building. If you would have talked to me 2 or 3 years ago, I wasn't building. And so I'm sharing enough for people who are maybe thinking about it or just simply curious about it, because I've been uninterested in building and still kind of curious about the whole process. And then also, obviously, for us, it's just a huge thing going on in our lives. So it's hard to completely leave it out because it is very mentally time consuming. Physically, maybe not. We're starting to work on quite a few things, but mentally, it's a lot. Okay. What are you doing for your new build to accommodate power outages? Making sure the windows will allow for drafts to cool the house in the summer, wood stoves and wood storage for the winter, whole house generator. So, there's with building, there's always a million things I'm trying to hold in my brain, because they're all in a note and they're kind of organized by when you'd need them. Like, they're in a note in my phone. But the problem is, a build, it moves really, well, in some ways it moves really slow, but in some ways it moves really fast. And you don't even realize that something's going to be worked on this week that you thought wasn't. And so when you say this, you're saying the whole house generator. I think back when we were thinking about building, that was something I was like, oh, we should do that. And at this exact moment, I've done nothing to make that happen. And I don't even know if I have the bandwidth for it. So I don't know at what point in the process that happens and who I need to talk to. So maybe, but for sure, we are doing lots of windows and they're all going to open because they're new. So that should be good for creating lots of drafts and cross breezes in the summertime. We didn't exactly design our build to, I think some people actually design the build so that they think about that. Like, okay, this window's open and this window's open at the same time. You'd create this breeze through there. I don't know we designed a house that really is based on history, based on historic proportions. So now that I'm thinking about where a lot of the windows are, there really is a lot of that. And I think it's because of the symmetry of building a house that is inspired by history that we actually do have that in quite a few areas. Like, when I think about the kitchen, there's a window that goes from the front of the kitchen to the back. We could open both of those. And I've had houses where it's like that. It does. It creates a nice breeze. And then same for the other direction in the house. When the pocket doors are open in the living room, there's a hall all the way from the east side to the west side that there are windows that line up. So I would think that would work pretty well. Either way, when you can open a lot of windows, it helps, especially at night. So I wouldn't be super worried about summer. Now, wintertime, we do have 3 wood-burning units. That was something we planned in the original design. We love wood stoves. We've heated with wood in both of our houses we were in while we were married. And then in the house that we're currently in, we're only here for hopefully 1 winter, possibly 2. So we didn't take any steps to make sure that it was heating with wood. And we did live last winter without heating with wood here in this house. But I love heating with wood. I think it's so cozy. So the new house does have 2 chimneys, and they're on the east side of the house are 2 wood stoves kind of back to back, and then one on the kitchen side, which will also double as a cook stove. So it's great to know that we could cook on that cook stove. We could heat the house. What we cannot do is operate our refrigerator and freezer, which we've had power outages before where power's out for 3 days, and that's a huge problem. So I think it would be great to have a generator, but it's been so infrequent. That's the hard part with me, is I'm not super prepared person by nature, and I always just assume everything's going to be fine, and that if that situation arises, you can always go to one of your friends or your neighbors or your family members with your frozen stuff, put it in their freezer. I have tons of family members and we all buy bulk meat. And so there's just a lot of freezers, and usually only one of those people or two of those people are out of power at the same time. Never had it to where we all were. Now, of course, that would be bad because we buy bulk meat and all of that. But as a person who's never had that happen, it's just hard to get that serious about it, even though I know there are people out there who right now are saying, like, I get it. Like, it never happened to me until it did. And then I lost, all this stuff. And so I think that I'm not saying it's wise. I'm not saying it's wise. I'm saying my mind is probably too overwhelmed at this point to even consider that. But maybe it's something you can add later. That's what I keep thinking. I'm like, what can we do when we're not like thinking about a million things? What can we add then? Just so many different things that I'm like, having to stress about right now. I'm like, well, could that be a future project? What could be a future project? So I feel like we're half prepared, half not. All right, taking a quick break from this episode to tell you about my course, Simple Sourdough. So I've been educating on sourdough since 2016 on my YouTube channel and on my blog. More recently, I took those years of resources, recipes, how-to instructions, and put them all into one course so that it's all compiled together. You can get it in one place and learn from the very basics. So if you are brand new and you want to learn how to do sourdough the simple way, or even if you want to improve your baking skills, you should check out my course, Simple Sourdough. It's all for a very affordable price. I wanted to get this information into kitchens all across the world. You can learn more and become a student at bit.ly/simple sourdough course. bit.ly/simple sourdough course, all one word, all lowercase. Okay, congrats on having a baby girl on the way. I'd love to know if you were trying for a girl after having the boys, or if you just had a girl naturally with no changes in your routine. I have 3 beautiful daughters, and my husband and I would love a son and are interested in natural methods to encourage this to happen. So, no, we absolutely did not try for a girl. I know that there are things you can do. Thinking back, I'm like, oh, well, because I if you follow this podcast a while, you know that I have sort of a little theory with like fermented foods and things like that. And I got pregnant just like a month after we moved, and I let my kefir grains just in the refrigerator. I never like revived them until much later. Just for whatever reason, we moved here, and I just, I kept my starter going, but my kefir grains, I just let them go. I just let them go. I mean, they're still alive, and I've made kefir since. But I will anecdotally say I was not drinking kefir. However, when I first shared that theory on like how much kefir, because for years and years, I drank a quart of kefir every single morning as part of a morning smoothie. And I kind of got out of the habit here more recently, around the time I was getting pregnant. However, when I first introduced that theory, because apparently when you have more fermented foods like that, it makes you more alkaline, which makes you more likely to have a boy. At that time, that had not been tested really in the other direction, and I was only really basing it off of my sister's experience and my experience. And then we kind of had a situation where one of us, obviously I'm like calling people out here, somebody that I know close avoided fermented foods just to like see, and still had a boy. Again, this is all anecdotal, so you need to do large, studies if you're actually going to be basing anything on because there are plenty of methods that show that when your body's more alkaline, you are more likely to have a boy. However, that still only slightly increases the odds, or, there are some people that just seem to have boys no matter what, or girls no matter what. So all that to say, I guess I could possibly say that was the reason, but I mean, that wasn't intentional. It was just kind of what happened with moving. But then they also do say that you're more likely to have girls the older you get. So I was 39 when I got pregnant with this baby. So I am a little bit older, and so who knows what is to blame, but we are super excited about it. We were not trying for a girl, and I actually really believed that it would be a boy, and I'm notoriously a bad guesser. I tell everybody, like, don't even trust my guess because it's always wrong. If I say it's this, it's probably the opposite. I was so confident it would be a boy. I did not even consider like, oh, we did XYZ, maybe it's going to be a girl, but it just was. So I don't have any tips, I guess. What do you do about children who resist bedtime and call you back to their room several times every night? If I don't come back, she screams at the top of her lungs, which will wake her siblings who are under 4, so I often run back whenever she calls. It's stupid things like, can you sing me another song? Can I have some water? I need to potty. What would you do? So I actually have one of these right now. With the way we have it set up, he's the youngest one that would wake the other. So Victor's very, very nearby, but I have a noisemaker, and so I'm not usually too worried about him waking up him. Oh, it's a challenge. What would I do? I don't have a handle on this right now because it is always something little, and I do think the more that you do it, the more likely they are to keep asking you for more things. So I guess it all depends on how big of a problem you find it to be. Because I do think that with a couple of nights of just not doing it, they do start to get the message that, like, doesn't matter if I scream, And I do think other kids do adapt to falling asleep in less than ideal situations. But I completely understand what you're saying. Sometimes, you're just like, well, they will grow out of it. So is it better to just do it and have them not wake up the little kids, or go through a process of about a week-long training period where you don't do it, it causes some disturbances and waking up the other kids, and then maybe they're all crying at one time, which I have learned that kind of scenario, just even thinking about it, makes you so stressed. Like, okay, well, if they cry and wake up the other 2, then we'll have 3 kids crying. But then ultimately, they're all going to go back to sleep. All 3 of them, even if they wake up, will go back to sleep and it'll be fine. So then you have to weigh out, would you rather wait till they grow out of it and kind of give in to all their demands so that you don't have to go through that very stressful period of like a week where the child keeps screaming, they wake up the other kids, and then after a week they realize, okay, she's not going to come bring me water because she already gave me water. She already took me potty. And then after that, it's kind of like you go through that period. It's actually really shorter than the long, drawn out giving into all their whims. I've gone both ways, and it kind of just depends where I am mentally and which one of those things weighs, like, am I prepared to go through a week of this child screaming, all 3 kids being awake at the exact same time, eventually falling back asleep because like everything will be fine. They're not going to stay up all night. Or, which one? And I've definitely chosen both, and I do find that they grow out of it because right now we kind of switch things up in our house. So now we have our 7-year-old, our 5-year-old, and our 3-year-old in one room, and it's the 3-year-old that does it. And the 7 and 5-year-old, they don't do it. They've done it at times in their lives, but now they know not to do it. So I do think it is something that they'll grow out of, but you might have, years of having to deal with it versus like a bad week. And so it's just weighing all that out. What I do try to do is anticipate all the things that they're going to say. So we go up there, I bring water, we make sure they've gone potty. They have the certain blanket. The 3-year-old has a certain blanket he likes. And I always bring up like an orange or a banana because he always tells me he wants a snack. And so while we're reading the book, I'm like, okay, eat your banana, drink your water. Now, what can you say to me? Make sure that all those needs are met so that it's not a genuine case, which it's not. I mean, you fed him dinner, you gave him water at dinner time. And so if you don't even want to do that, that's fine too. I think it'll be fine, but I understand how stressful it is when you're going through it because I'm currently kind of doing that right now. Have you ever, so this is in the same vein, another similar question. Have you ever had a baby close to 1 share a room with a toddler? If so, how did you make that transition if they had different bedtimes did it work well for your family? So we've never done that. I personally would prefer to keep a child under 1 in my room. And I'm not saying because like you're close to them and then, not, I mean, that's great too. But I am strictly from a practical standpoint, usually more worried about disrupting the toddler because they're a more difficult, like right now, Victor's almost 2. And I want him to be as alone as possible. If I have to put every other child in my family in one room and then that child in their own room just so they'll sleep better, that's personally what I would do. I know plenty of people who have done this and who tell me there's nothing to worry about, that they actually adjust just fine. Even if they go to bed at different times, kids end up transitioning fine. So I think when I say I've never done it, that's because I have a hard time believing that. But people tell you over and over again that they adjust to anything. So I think that it would probably be completely fine. And within a week, they would go to bed at their own respective times, fall asleep. Kids are quite adaptable to new routines. So this is from a person who's, been like, I don't know, I'd rather not. Yet people tell you it works out just fine. So I kind of do believe them. I just also feel like it's, if possible, if your house allows it, it's easier to keep those ages apart. But it might just be one of those things where if you rip the Band-Aid off and put them together just within, like a few days, they understand that's the routine. They go to sleep because they know it's time to sleep, and it works out fine. Okay, how do you manage toddlers and non-swimmers at the pool and creek? I have 4 kids under 8 years old, and only my 8-year-old is swimming this summer. When I only had 3 kids, 2 non-swimmers and a baby on a blanket, taking my kids to explore blue holes and pools all summer was our very favorite thing. But now I have 4 kids who all want to be in the water, and I'm increasingly terrified to take them swimming on my own. My 2-year-old specifically is scary because she's so brave and will jump right in, and I have to keep constant hands on her. I'm hoping to find a magical life jacket that I can put on her so I at least know if she jumps in, she'll stay above water till I can grab her. Any tips for taking your kids swimming and keeping everyone alive? Or am I just too outnumbered this summer? So you might be too outnumbered this summer. I have, let's see here, right now, so this summer, I have only 2 non-swimmers. Now, once the baby comes, pool season will be over. So that is typically where I am. I don't think I've ever had more than 3. Now, I have had 3, and I find it way more stressful because when you're at the pool and the creeks with swimmers, you still have to keep an eye on them, but it's not like this hovering thing where you're following them around. And my sister and I, we talk about this all the time. If it would ever be more than 3, like for some reason, 3 seems like the magic number. And even then, it depends on the 3 and how much of a wanderer they are. I was at the pool the other day with one of my sisters, and her 1 is such a wanderer and wants to jump in every deep end that even that 1 was a little too much. Now, if you had 3 like that would pretty much be impossible. But this summer, what I have currently is a 3-year-old who can operate a life jacket because, at some point they can actually swim around in a life jacket and not get stuck. Whereas when they're younger, like Victor's age, I don't even put one on him because he doesn't even know how to operate. Like he just could go face down. One of my sisters really swears by those infant ones that flip them onto their back. So they have the pad on the front and then they have the little headrest thing on the back. And so that helps. But even still, when they're non-swimmers, you got to stay really close because they can get kind of tangled up and not even know how to flip them over. So basically, you have 3 non-swimmers. So it's kind of the same situation. I have only currently 2, but I would say that I'm just going to assume your kids are like 8, 6, 4, 2 or something. I would say the 2 that are below the 8-year-old likely could operate a life jacket just fine. And so I would definitely have life jackets on them and then just stay really close to the 2-year-old because, yeah. But you could just possibly be too outnumbered with the number of non-swimmers you have. I could never imagine like if there was like 4 or more non-swimmers, it'd be too hard. You can only keep a close eye on so many. I'm actually, with having 6 swimmers this summer and 2 non-swimmers, I'm actually at a fairly relaxed point when I'm at those situations. I've had summers with less kids where I was at a less relaxed point just based on all of their, development and all of their personalities. So I think as a mom, you can really feel it. You can tell when you go there if this is fine or this is not fine. And I've had times where there have been summers where I never would bring all my kids, and I would leave like the hardest one back with Luke, and I would just take all the rest. And so you can feel if that's what's happening and whether or not that's actually a doable thing for you. It's weird because right now I have 8 kids, and I'm actually at this exact moment now, give me, if this was the end of September and I had this baby and those 2 non-swimmers, it may be a whole different thing. But at this exact moment, I'm actually at a relaxed point at those places, but that's not always the case. And so if you feel too outnumbered, it's too stressful, maybe just wait till next summer, which is hard because you need to get the older kids swimming, but it's really hard to teach them to swim if you skip summers without water. And what I did in those summers is, even when Luke was working, I would go to the pool. Our favorite time to go to the pool, because right now we just go to public pools, is the last 2 hours they're open because they're always less crowded. That's just been our experience with like every pool we've ever gone to. So I would wait till he got off work, and then I would just go with all the rest of the kids except that one. And then that would allow the kids that are on the cusp of learning how to swim time in the water to get acquainted and then learn how to swim. So it's kind of a whole conundrum because, if you get too far past the point where you have so many kids that can't swim, well, then you can't really teach them to swim because they're all wearing life jackets and out of the water. My current 3-year-old, who will be 4 in October, as soon as our pool is open, because we're putting a pool in at our farm, I want him to go without a life jacket because I really think just with his personality, and I think he could learn to swim by the end of this summer if I could just take the life jacket off. But it's been hard with going to a public pool. I feel safer watching really closely right by me my almost 2-year-old and then keeping him close but in his little life jacket. And so when I can finally get that life jacket off, I think he'll be swimming pretty well too. I can't remember if I answered this one last time, and I talk about sleep constantly, and it's funny that I even take these questions because I so feel like I'm not an expert at all. I do have 8 children, and they all 8 do sleep through the night. And so I guess I have what works for me, even if it's probably not, it wouldn't pass any of the books or the courses that you take on sleep. I don't know. I don't think I do anything right. But I still feel quite inadequate in talking about this, especially because I know that about 10 months from now, I'm going to be sitting here with a 7-month-old who will only contact nap, who will not sleep through the night, who will literally latch on and nurse all night long and be very frustrated and will act like I know nothing. However, I know around 1, I have this thing I do and she'll sleep and all of that. So this is coming from a place of right now, I have 8 kids who sleep through the night. And so I guess I'm feeling good about it right now, but I won't be in about, as soon as this child's like 6 months old. Many years ago, when I was pregnant with my 5th child, I decided to add YouTube to my internet business to diversify and open up a whole world of opportunities. Many things have changed about YouTube since that day. A lot of things, honestly, have remained the same, but I love to educate students on how to create an income from home through YouTube with my YouTube Success Masterclass, which you can find over at bit.ly/farmhouse YouTube Masterclass, bit.ly bit.ly/farmhouse YouTube masterclass, all lowercase. There I share the mistakes that I made when I first got started, how you can achieve success faster, and how to earn a diverse and stable income from the YouTube platform. So if you are interested in using video to reach a wider audience for a business you already have, or you're just curious about what it might look like to incorporate YouTube into your life as a homemaker or a stay-at-home mom, go ahead and check out that free masterclass that I put together for you. With that being said, here's the question. Can you share your experience with 1 to 2 year old sleep? We currently have a 12-month-old and she'll only contact sleep for naps and nighttime. I don't mind letting her sleep with us because everyone sleeps well, but it would be nice to be able to have time with just my husband and I. I start her out in her own bedroom every night, and after 1 to 2 hours of nursing, holding her to sleep, she'll let me transfer her, but 30 minutes later, she wakes back up and we have to repeat the process over and over, or just bring her into our bed and get actual good sleep. So my husband and I only get 30 minutes to ourselves if she even lets us transfer her. We don't want to cry it out, but looking for tips or encouragement. Will she grow out of it? How do people who don't sleep train do it? So I do sleep train. I have, I've always done that. I wait till they're about 1 to do it because there's something called object permanence, I think. And basically, at some point, I feel like, it's good for everyone, including the baby, if they get sleep. And a lot of people do it a lot sooner, a lot younger. You can do it a lot younger. I think it all matters in your head when you think that everybody, including the baby, you mentally are ready for that. But based on just reading this question, I would not continue to do what you're doing personally, but that's just my personal threshold. I can do it for so long, and then I just realize, okay, you need sleep. And your question was, will she grow out of it? How do people who don't sleep train do it? You will have to ask somebody who doesn't sleep train, because my kids never would have grown. Well, okay, I'm saying that as somebody who probably the latest that I got a baby out of my bed and sleeping through the night in their own bed was probably about like 15 months. But I can tell you that up till then, because I don't have experience, this is kind of like when people say, I never go into labor yet. I get induced every time at 40 weeks. And you're like, well, you never really gave it a good shot. So I can understand the eye roll if some of you have had kids grow out of it at, say, 18 months, and you're like, well, you just didn't give it long enough. Very possible. I can tell you that if it's any time before 1, my kids never grow out of it. They don't just sleep through the night. Like, it's not this thing that just suddenly, I've heard so many people say, they just start sleeping through the night. I put them down and just started sleeping through the night. That's never happened. So for me, it's one of those things that just eventually, for everyone's sake, you realize, okay, this was great. We had a good run with like all of the contact naps and all of the co-sleeping overnight. And it was wonderful and beautiful. And now nobody's getting any sleep anymore. We're not getting any time together. We're just really running on empty. And that's when, and that could happen a lot earlier. And I still would probably just push through because I wouldn't personally be comfortable doing it too much younger. But at some point, for me personally, I would just think that it would be better to not do all of that. But everybody has different opinions on this, and I know they do. And I get lots of people who have very different opinions. I'm just telling you that for me personally, my children never grew out of it at that age. It wasn't, they would have definitely done the exact same thing, because when I read your scenario here of what happens every night, been there, done that with like every 10-month-old ever, and they don't let you leave. They want to sleep with you all night, which, my 3-year-old still wants to sleep with me all night. But it's better for everyone's sleep in the whole house if he doesn't. So that's just, personally, we do eventually sleep train. Does having another girl change the plan for the bedrooms in the new build? How many children are you expecting to sleep in each room? So it really doesn't, mostly because I know that the little girl will be in my room at least probably 2 years, because just with the way the house is, and even if we have another baby, I think a pack and play in our room would probably work out better for quite a while. And then my older girls are so much older, they'll be 15 and 17 about when the baby's born. They won't be, I'm not going to have them sharing a room with her because they stay up, late and everything. So I don't think that the plans will immediately change. The thing with having a large family, all different ages, is things change a lot. So I could picture, okay, this is what I think. We're going to put these two here, these two here, these two here. And then it could be very different 3 years from now, 5 years from now, and we're not even moved in yet. So I don't really know exactly where we will be when we get to the point where she'll need a room as well. With our house, we do have a lot of flex space. So up in the attic, there are 2 large rooms that I'm not really counting as bedrooms, because I plan to use maybe possibly one as like a podcast studio and the other side as a sewing space for the girls. But then, that could change too. And so that could eventually be bedrooms. We don't know for sure, but nothing is currently changing with the plans. They are just going on as usual. And, we knew that we could have another child. And so we made a house that we feel like is quite flexible for our family for many years to come. And definitely don't feel like every child needs their own room. We'll be doing a lot of sharing depending on, who's currently just personality-wise meshing, sleep-wise. So as far as like the babies, I think immediately it would be my current 3-year-old and 1-year-old, which they'll be 4 and 2 at that point, will be sharing a room together because they need to go to bed earlier. And right now it's a little bit too much chaos going on, which is probably why I'm having those issues with the 3-year-old, like I mentioned. And then I'm even thinking the 3 above them would do better together than even the one that this one would match with. And so it's not always, 2, 2, 2, and 2 necessarily. So we will see. And who knows by the time we move in and how old she'll be, what that will all look like. But really, when we designed our home, I wanted a lot of bedrooms, and I feel like we got a pretty good amount, but smaller. They're some of the bedrooms are quite small. Some of them are larger. Less space, but more bedrooms. So we can just have the flexibility to kind of do whatever with them, have some flex space. And then downstairs in the main living area, just having a lot of, space in our kitchen. I'm really missing that. So I feel like it'll work really well. Okay. Hey, Lisa, my husband and I are currently planning a new home build, and you've been very inspiring. Well, thank you. What kind of siding are you going with on your new old house build? Are you going with shiplap or board and batten look? Are you going to use real wood or hardy board? So we are doing lap siding. So like you would see on, the first 2 houses I lived in that were over 100 years old, both had that kind of siding. And we are doing wood. And I know people think that we are crazy, but when I see a house that isn't, I just know. So I know that wouldn't be the choice for everyone, but that is what we are doing. So it's cedar lap siding. Now, it's not up yet, but that is what we're going to be doing. Okay, I just want to let you all know that we're having major technical difficulties with the app in which I record all my podcast episodes. And so if it seems choppy and like I forgot what I was talking about, that's because it has been. So I'm going to try to pick up on the last question I was answering and then wrap it up before I get kicked off again. They should have this all resolved tomorrow, but I reserved time today to record this. So we're just going to have to go with it. Okay. Hi, Lisa. Congratulations on a baby girl coming soon. I have 2 unrelated questions. For a while, I've been pondering upon getting an Instant Pot, but cannot decide if it'll be good and useful purchase. Could you share a bit more about your experience? How much simpler does it make your life? What are its key advantages? Second question, I'm pregnant with my second baby, and this pregnancy feels harder on my body than the first. My lower back started hurting way sooner than on my first pregnancy. And in other ways, I feel not so good at all, especially tired by the end of the day. I do not attribute this to the age gap between kids, it isn't large, but not that small either, as my first child will be turning 2 around the time when the second baby arrives. I should also add that I did dedicate time and attention to postpartum recovery. I would like to ask your experience with successive pregnancies has been in that respect. Do you find that some pregnancies are harder on your body than others? If yes, do you feel like it's random or is there a pattern you've observed? Okay, so on the Instant Pot, right now, before coming up here to record this, we are going to be going to a store to look at the wood stoves because we have to do that before we get the chimney. And so we're going to be going straight from recording this to driving to a different faraway place. Anyways, we're going to get home right at dinner time. And I had nothing planned. So I got 2 very frozen solid roast out of the freezer outside, put them in the Instant Pot. And those will just be cooking for, 2 hours, I think, because they're so rock solid. And because I did 2 of them, normally I would do 1 hour if it was thawed, if there was 1 of them. And then it'll just click down to warm or slow cook all the way until we get home tonight. So this will be many, many hours. Then when we come home, I will get some chips out of the pantry, some salsa, probably shred some cheese. I don't know if we have any avocados, but we'll have just this little Mexican dish. And so in those cases, I would say I wouldn't be without an Instant Pot because when I realized what all was going on today and that we were going to not be home to make dinner, I'm not really exactly sure what I would have done. I mean, I could have definitely gotten something else going probably in some other application, but this is frozen meat. It's a Monday, so I am out of the groove. I don't have anything thought out. And that was just a really quick bailout that the Instant Pot provided me. And like I said, due to technical difficulties, I don't even remember what the next question was. I am so worried I'm going to get pushed out of here again. So I'm just going to wrap this up. As always, thank you all so much for listening. Thank you so much for submitting your questions. It's been really just a great way to chat and a inspiration point, a jumping off point for what to talk about by reading your questions and directly responding to them. It makes it for a nice conversational approach to have your input as well. We will leave linked in the show notes or description box below, depending on where you are getting this podcast, where you can submit your questions. And if I missed your question, I'm really sorry. There's a bunch of them, and I kind of glance through them and just try to answer, depending on how wordy I am, 5 or 6 of those questions per episode. And then I will just continue doing that throughout the year. It's a really great way to keep you all updated on all the things happening. There's a lot going on in our family right now, which is fun. I go back and forth between it being really exciting and fun and just I cannot wait till this is all over. It can happen in the same day that I feel this way, where I'm so overwhelmed. I just want life to be normal again, because when you're in the middle of building a house, I don't know that it can be. I mean, maybe if you aren't trying to get a certain look, that's been really, probably I've overcomplicated it by knowing that this is, our one shot. We're building our dream house on this farm. We're never going to do it again. It's just this 1 year. And so I'm all in mentally, which means that, some days I'm very inspired and I'm looking through design books and I'm really on top of selecting things. And then other days I'm oh, what are we waiting on now? Is this thing going to come in time for this? Should I be ordering this? It's just back and forth between the really practical, logistical things and then the fun things. And then they're all mixed up and it can get a little stressful. We're having a baby this summer. And so I don't think I'll ever look back and think that this was a laid back time of my life. I know that for sure. And I think in a year from now, I think that, it'll just be life as usual again, where I'm just kind of thinking about, what I'm making for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And, if the kids and I are going to go to this place and I'm going to do this podcast interview maybe in the afternoon, that normal life piece that we've had for years and we'll have for years after that is a little on pause right now at this exact time. And I think that, just chatting through it, bringing you all along with it. I get your suggestions and input and encouragement, and then hopefully I bring some of that to you as well with these solo episodes as well as with the guest. All right. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode of the Simple Farmhouse Life podcast. Thanks, as always, for listening to the Simple Farmhouse Life podcast. My husband Luke and I and our 8 kids work together side by side on our little homestead and use our blog, podcast, and YouTube channel to reach other homemakers, home cooks, and homesteaders with practical recipes in daily family life. For everyday sourdough recipes, make sure to check out our blog, farmhouseonboone.com. And to dig deeper, we do also offer a course called Simple Sourdough over at bit.ly/farmhouse sourdough course. That's all one word, bit.ly/farmhouse sourdough course. If you're looking to learn how we earn an income online, check out my YouTube course at bit.ly/farmhouse YouTube course, all one word.